Welcome to Conversations for the Animals, Houston Pet Set's podcast. I am Lisa Tynan, and I am joined today by the magnificent Angelita Sampaio. And we're going to talk about Emancipet today, which is one of Houston Pet Set's capital P partners. We work together really closely for the Houston community, so I'm excited to talk about what Emancipet is, what it does, why it is so important, but also we want to get to know you a little bit. We're going to start off by introducing I'm going to preface this with, we had a conversation not that long ago where you told me about your life history and employment history. And it is so varied and so interesting that that's where I want to start, because you have done a ton of really seemingly random stuff that has led you magically into the veterinary world, which I find very interesting.
It's quite an interesting background, as you were saying. So you and I were chatting a while back, and the story is so long, but we lived abroad when I was younger. My father was a biologist, and so we moved to Chile, to South America, when I was about 9 years old. And it was an amazing year because I went to international school. I learned Spanish. I became fluent in Spanish because I wasn't fluent to that point, And it was just an incredible year. I think that as a child, you are able to absorb so much.
Yeah.
I think that as an adult to learn another language is very difficult. As a child, you're just playing out there with your friends and you're picking it up. So it was an amazing year. We traveled quite a bit to Bolivia and Argentina and a few other places. And then we returned back to, I'm from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Let me start with that, sorry.
Yeah.
So then returned to New Mexico, and I just had this new passion for travel and for just other cultures as a young child. And so when I was in high school, I did a summer abroad with Amigos de las Americas. They're another nonprofit based out of Houston, and their national offices here. And I did a summer abroad in Paraguay. And what it was we basically worked with in different community health service projects. Mine was immunizations program.
Okay.
So you learn how to give immunizations as a sophomore in high school.
What?
You practice on oranges because it's kind of similar to or someone's arm.
I guess.
So they train you up throughout the year, you fundraise, and then you go and live with the family. And it's a family who lives in the community that you're serving. And so my host mother was a nurse at the clinic that I worked at. And so we worked at the clinic, then we went also into different communities and gave immunizations. But it wasn't just a one-stop shop type thing. We did a lot about educational conversation on hygiene and HIV prevention and awareness. So we were able to do so much in that community. And that was my first time kind of going away from my family, doing my own thing abroad. And so then fast forward into high school, I ended up graduating a semester early from my senior year to live in Brazil. And that was an incredible time. So that was kind of where it kicked off for me as an adult. And so I did an exchange program in high school in Brazil. I went and had my undergrad at University of New Mexico. Went back to Brazil again. I also lived in Costa Rica. And so that's just my passion and love for languages. I became trilingual at that point,
you
too,
speak
of course.
Portuguese,
yes,
right?
I learned
That's
that in high school.
amazing.
Yes, it was so easy to pick up because of my Spanish. And so it's also kind of a unique language as well. And so living in Brazil and then having that passion. And my initial plan was that I was going to go to Santa Clara University. Because I wanted to get out of New Mexico. But after living abroad, I wanted to be in New Mexico and just be able to go abroad off and on. So when I went to UNM, University of New Mexico, I focused on Latin American studies, Portuguese, and Spanish. And it's kind of a random undergraduate degree to get. It's it was a double major and a minor. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with this?
Right.
And so at our graduation, Univision came out and a few other people came out to interview us. And they said, what do you want to do with this degree? It's a very random degree. And I said, I want to work for Univision. And sure enough, that was my first job out of college with my undergraduate degree.
So cool.
I worked for Univision at the station in Albuquerque, New Mexico, FCC compliance and regulations. And my boss was actually out of Los Angeles with Univision Corporate, and he became executive producer of a game show. And
this is my favorite part.
Yes, and so he was so funny. He said, I love working with you. If you want to move to Los Angeles, I'll hire you in a heartbeat. And I said, okay, how soon can I move?
Okay.
And so I moved to Los Angeles, and I started off as being a production assistant because I was so new to production. And I was able to really move up quickly to the point that I was able to shadow on Wheel of Fortune and a few other shows to learn how to run a contestant department, how to run an audience department. There's so much that goes into a game show.
Right.
And we were recording, it's called Trato Hecho. show. So it's Let's Make a Deal in Spanish. So Monty Hall came out to the show to help us kind of understand, like, what does a set need to look like? You know, what are the different challenges? What are the different activities that we're going to do? So it was such a neat experience to have. I mean, straight out of, you know, college, and not being from LA either. And so learning the intricacies of, like, how to set up a stage, how to recruit for talent, and what you look for in an audience member and a contestant. So we did that for a couple seasons. And then at that point, I started back at Univision Corporate, and I missed being face-to-face with people. Yeah. I missed, you know, shooting 3 shows a day and having that intense experience.
A lot of adrenaline,
a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
You know, we shot 3 shows a day. 4 days a week.
Oh my God.
And so it was a lot.
That makes me tired.
It was tired, but it was so much fun. I mean, you just, like, you ended your day just exhausted, but it was so worth it.
Yeah.
And when I went to corporate, I just didn't enjoy it. And so I started looking for other jobs. And so I applied here in Houston at Amigos as an alum because that impacted my life so much. And they had an opening for director of partnerships with them. And so that's how I moved to Houston in 2006. So I was with Amigos for a couple of years. And then I got into the Brazilian consulate. Since I speak Portuguese fluently, they're opening a new trade department, international trade. And so I was the only non-Brazilian to work at the consulate here in Houston.
Ooh,
yeah,
bravo,
so that was kind of an exciting thing for me. And of course, working with corporations and helping them understand how to open a business in Brazil. What kind of visa do you need? I met a lot of oil and gas representatives.
Sure.
So after my stint at the Brazilian consulate, I went to work for KBR, so Kellogg Brown and Root, and I worked on an Angolan Brazilian project. And I was able to travel to Angola, which was really neat because, you know, I mean, I had never envisioned myself going to Angola. Yeah. And it was really, our clients were incredible. And so I was able to travel there. So I was at KBR, and then I went on to Petrobras, Brazilian oil company, worked in procurement. And then I went to Maersk Oil and also worked in an Angolan Brazilian project. So it's just, that's kind of like been my history. Yeah. But my biggest passion has always been animal welfare.
Which, like, feels like it just comes out of left field.
It just does, right? It seems like
there.
It seems like it, but it's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
So growing up in Albuquerque, actually a little bit north of Albuquerque in Bernalillo, we had a few animals that were always dumped in our neighborhood. Yeah. And they were always not in the best condition. You know, they'd been shot or poisoned or something. And so growing up seeing that was really impactful for me. And we at the time had one family dog, Coco, who we adopted from the shelter. And so just knowing how much we loved that dog, like she was such a part of our family, and just knowing that the animals that were suffering around us, it made me just really kind of want to do more to help the animals that were around. Yeah. So I was like middle school, high school, I became really interested in animal welfare in general. And I actually wanted to become a veterinarian for the longest time.
Didn't we all?
I know.
I went through that phase.
Yeah, I think all of us that love animals think it's like a thing that they want to do, you know. But then the reality hits in where I shadowed a country vet, and it was too much for me emotionally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just seeing the positive side every single day. It's like you're looking at people who are having to make heart-wrenching like decisions to like euthanize their pet, or perhaps they're just doing it because it's an inconvenience to their lifestyle. So it kind of depends, but it was just very impactful in a not so positive way for me. And so, I mean, I shadowed surgery, I did all of that, but then I decided that was not really what I wanted to do. Right. And so as far as animal welfare, really the biggest thing is living abroad, I saw a lot of animals that were really suffering, and it was, you know, a third world country, whatever that might be. So it's different resources. And so I wanted to do more also when I was abroad. So it was hard. I remember in Costa Rica, I brought home a puppy. My host mom was like, "What are you doing?" You know, and I was like, "Well, I got to find it a home." And we found it a home, but it's one of those things where I could only do a couple of things here and there to help. I couldn't make a big impact, you know, not living there like 100% of the time. And so fast forwarding to many trips to Brazil. You know, we had family pets, like I said, growing up. We had dogs who lived to be, you know, 15, 16. And when I moved to Houston, we took a trip to Brazil. I think it was in, I don't know, December of that year. I don't remember the month exactly, but we found a mama dog. She had some puppies. And so my former partner's family adopted the mom. And the idea was to get her spayed and then have, you know, that puppies adopted out. But this is in Brazil, and it's kind of in a more rural area. Well, they didn't tell me that they didn't get her spayed, and so she ended up having 2 litters.
Oh, no.
And nobody told me because they knew I wasn't going to like it. And so we were going back the following year, and my former partner said, "You know, I have to tell you something because you know you're going to see this." He's like, "She had Pachito's the name of the dog. She had 2 litters of puppies. My family didn't get her spayed, and even though like we had, you know, talked about the importance, we had a vet all lined up." They're like, you know, they think it's cruel to do that to her, so they don't want to do that, and they're afraid of what's going to happen. And so I said, you know what? I said, how many puppies were there? And he's like, well, the first one had 8 had 8 in the litter. Second one had 10.
Oh,
This is a little street dog, right?
Oh my God.
And I'm like, how does she have so many puppies? And so it was tough to hear that, but I also knew that I couldn't do anything at that point. And so I said, well, how many puppies are left from this litter? And he said 3. And I said, okay, well, just have them hold on to them until we go for Christmas and we'll figure something out. So we flew down to Brazil, and while we were there, we had her spayed.
Thank goodness.
Yes, like we had it done while we were there. It's like no excuses anymore. And so there were 3 puppies remaining. And I remember like when I saw them for the first time, they were outdoors, you know, they were in a little area, and this little brown gold puppy, and I just knew he was mine forever, right? And he had his belly was full of worms. Like so we named him Buddha because he had a big Buddha belly. And then there were 2 girls, and we named Flora and Nena. And then, you know, the idea was to bring all 3 of them back with us. Now that Mama was spayed,
Sure.
Bring all 3 of them back with us. And I was going to keep Buddha and then get the girls all, you know, spayed and everything else and then adopt them out. Well, that didn't happen.
Oops.
Fast forward to now, they're almost 16 years old.
Amazing.
Yes, and they're going to be 16 in October. And it has been a struggle because, I mean, they have had so many different you know, behavioral issues and other things going on, but I wouldn't change it for the world because one of them was deemed as unadoptable with the rescue we tried to put her through. She's an amazing dog today, you know? So it's one of those things where I didn't want to give up on her. And I know that it seems crazy to bring 3 animals from Brazil, knowing we have so many stray animals here in Houston, so many animals that can be adopted locally. But for me, it was at one time that I could make an impact. And it was not easy to get them back from Brazil. We had to go through Ministry of Agriculture. We had to fly them from Brazil to Miami, hire a customs broker, and then we had to fly out to Miami. It was a lot.
Holy complicated.
Yes, it was very complicated.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I said, I mean, I wouldn't change it because I love them so much.
Baby.
And they've been my biggest inspiration. And so that's kind of where this all came about, where living in Houston, bringing them here as puppies, and then seeing stray animals all throughout the city. I'm like, where are these dogs coming from? I don't understand, you know.
They like literally come out of the woodwork.
They really do. And in Albuquerque, again, like they'd be dumped from like some of the neighboring areas. But here it's like no matter where I'm going, I find a stray animal. So I lived in Montrose when I first moved here, the Heights, and now I'm in Spring Branch. But there's always dogs. I mean, even like yesterday, I saw, you know, a dog just on my way to a business meeting. And so I started, you know, stopping to try to help. But the thing is, when you have 3 dogs at home that are reactive and have behavior issues, I can't bring every dog home, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But I did my best. So I said, well, how can I try to like make an impact here, knowing that I'm limited at home because of what I have at home with my dogs? So I started doing independent rescuing, and I got involved with Friends for Life because they would help me at least get the animals through their adoption program.
Right.
A lot of times I had to foster them myself, but it wasn't normally too long of fostering. And then I got involved with RPM, Rescued Pets Movement, because it's short-term fostering.
Right.
And those are animals that are off the euthanasia list that are truly code red, right?
Right.
And they're all so highly adoptable. And so it's shocking to me that these animals that are perfect, I mean, they have, unlike my dogs, they don't have behavior issues. You know, they're nice. They have all these different things. And they would have been put to sleep, euthanized otherwise. And so I normally would foster mama dogs with newborn puppies or just newborn puppies or young puppies because that's what I could handle at my home because they'd be in their own bedroom.
Right.
I would rotate my dogs and, you know, the fosters throughout the house. So with RPM alone, I've fostered about 200 and some dogs and some cats too. But the cats I can't really do as easily with my dogs.
Right. That's taking
it's a little
lives
bit,
in hands.
It's a lot. But, you know, it's one of those things where it is tough, you know, to all the cleanup and everything else you have to do. But at the end of the day, you are saving lives one life at a time. And people say, well, I don't want to foster. It's going to be too sad to say goodbye. It is sad to say goodbye. But at the same time, it would be more heartbreaking to know that you didn't do something and the animal ended up being euthanized and didn't have that opportunity to have that family because they go off and they're loved by families. Like one of my fosters, like she travels on her family's boat on their plane. I mean, all over the place. It's like you go from forgotten to forever.
Oh my gosh.
And how incredible that is,
That's
right?
amazing.
So that's a really long intro to how I got to where I'm at today.
No, but that's why I wanted to talk about it because everybody comes to animal welfare from a completely different route, and yours is so unique, but I feel like you got really great perspectives on the entire world and the situation of animal welfare everywhere, and it also gives you a kind of interesting perspective on Houston's animal welfare, which sometimes, you know, we say sometimes looks like a third world country here, and I think it's important to acknowledge that we have a lot of work to do. And again, I am Lisa with Houston Pet Set. This is Conversations for the Animals, and we're talking with Angelita Sampaio with Emancipet. So now I want to talk about Emancipet and how you got to Emancipet and what it is, because, I'm sure anyone in the rescue community, if they haven't already directly worked with y'all or referred people to you, they're going to want to after they hear this. So tell us a little bit about what Emancipet is, what you do, what the organization does.
Okay. So I came to Emancipet because I was always spending my free time, if you will, fostering, rescuing, supporting, going to some of the community spay and neuter free events. And I heard about Emancipet coming to Houston, and it seems so unique to me in the sense that Emancipet's from Austin, 23 years old, and so started in 1999. And
wait a minute, 1999 was 23 years ago.
What did I say?
No, I just had a moment of panic that's how long ago 1999.
Yes.
All right, cool.
I'm like, wait, what did I say?
No, you were right.
Yes.
It made me feel
some
very
of us
ill.
were graduating from high school at the time. So, just a long time ago. But it's been a while, right? And so having that deep-rooted history in Austin and then moving to, they moved to Houston, but Emancipet moved to Houston about 7 years ago. And the way that started was, it was kind of a combination of Unity for a Solution, which is a nonprofit that brings together numerous rescue groups and entities that want to solve the issue of overpopulation in Houston.
Yep.
So Unity for a Solution, which was largely started by Gloria's Antenna with Barrio Dogs, Kelly Mann, who was with, I think, Forgotten Dogs of the Fifth Ward, and then a few other people. And so it was Unity for a Solution, those groups, and also with Councilmember Robert Gallegos. And seeing what Emancipet did in Austin, I'm going to kind of repeat that here in Houston, where our mission is to make veterinary care affordable and accessible for everybody. And so not having to turn anybody away and not having to have that be a barrier to someone having access to vet care. So in the sense that, basically it's veterinary care for everybody. And that's one thing that cutting down those barriers to access to care is huge. And because many people don't even, know about the benefits of spaying and neutering or that really, it's as far as like what DHPP is or parvo, like having how important it is to have vaccines, but also having them boosted every once in a while and what it prevents. And so really it's about accessibility to vet care, but also to information.
Yeah.
And so when I heard about Emancipet, I thought that's so neat because when you come from a background of seeing the ugly side of rescue, seeing animals suffering, and many times, it's because someone perhaps has abused them, and neglected them, if you would say. But also, sometimes people just don't know, that they have other options. And so kind of seeing the ugly side of like what you'd see in humanity, but then with Emancipet, you see the opposite. You see people being empowered, creating new bridges between access to care, and then people understanding the importance of spay, neuter, vaccines, et cetera. And so you see the positive side. And in Emancipet, it's all spay and neuter services and wellness services and heartworm treatment here in Houston. In Austin, they do a little bit more as far as special surgeries, but not having to see the euthanasia part too is big.
It's very inspiring.
It is. Yeah. And so for me, it's like I started following Emancipet's activities. And then, again, it's like I had my jobs that I was challenged with and I enjoyed the travel, but my heart wasn't there. And so when they were hiring for the vice president role, I said, what, I would love to work for this organization. And that's how I came to join the team about 3.5 years ago. And so what we do is what I was saying a second ago is, we have different clinics throughout Houston.
How many are you up to now?
Now we're up to 3.
Whoop, whoop.
Yes. And so 7 years ago started the first, when Emancipet goes into a new community, it's in a mobile unit, basically, a gooseneck trailer. And it pretty much is a mobile, huge spay, neuter, and wellness clinic. And it's not mobile, though. I mean, you park it. Yeah, you park it. Yeah, you park it. And it's really big. And so when it started 7 years ago, it was at the Ripley House and Alpha Navigation. And that was, again, because of a lot with Gallegos and Barrio Dogs and Unity. And so it was parked there for a while to be able to kind of grow attention and understanding of the services. One component that I think is really neat that we have here in Houston is a community outreach coordinator, and that's Stephanie Plata.
Shout out to Stephanie.
Stephanie's amazing. And anybody who knows her loves Stephanie.
Yeah.
And so what her role was to really just kind of go door to door and talking to people. We want to make sure that we are very respectful of all of our clients, our community. We never want to push our agenda because, again, our agenda is, again, to make it accessible to everybody. But if someone does not want to spay or neuter their animal today, perhaps they're going to want to do that a year from now.
Right.
But being non-judgmental, being very open and treating everybody with compassion and dignity. So we make sure that's a huge pillar of who we are.
Yeah,
And
I
like,
love that.
yes, because again, you don't want to shun somebody, and you may not understand why they're making that decision, but talking to those families or having that open communication, you're going to understand what people are thinking and have that dialogue.
Yeah.
So with Stephanie, a lot of it's just like, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do. And then they might ask questions, they may not. And then, I know she's just had families in the past that wanted to just do the wellness initially, the shots, and then maybe after a year or two decided they wanted to spay or neuter their pet. And so again, knowing that we're there for them, whether it be today or 5 years down the road, and we're always going to welcome with open arms, basically moving forward.
Yeah.
And so that's a big thing. What we do in Emancipet is we have the spay and neuter component. At each of our clinics, depending on our doctor's capacity, we will spay and neuter maybe 25 to 35 dogs and cats per day.
That's amazing.
At each clinic. So
wow.
At each clinic, yes.
Yeah.
So imagine, again, so our clinics are open various days of the week, but there's some days that you're hitting that target, almost 100 animals that you're spaying and neutering throughout all the different clinics every single day.
So many, I love that.
That's a lot, and the demand is really high.
Right.
So Emancipet was kind of scaling up little by little until Hurricane Harvey hit. Hurricane Harvey, we were able to do a partnership in which we were able to offer free services for an extended period of time. And so that's when we really took off in the community, because people were impacted obviously by the hurricane.
Yeah.
And people still are today, trying to kind of recover in many ways. And so the fact that was kind of the first time where there was a lot of focus on people and their pets and not being separated from their pets, right? Because people were going into shelters and they couldn't bring their animals with them. And so how do you make that decision, right? And some people were just risking their own lives because they did not want to let their animals stay behind.
Right.
And that's a big part of what we do is, again, like seeing the bond and the relationship between people and their pets. And some people think, well, if you can't afford the vet, you shouldn't have the pet. But the truth is, we don't know where the animals come from, and at the end of the day, it's not our place to judge. But many of these animals are stray animals that these families have taken in and that they're loving and that they're doing the best that they can for their pet. And so it's a very optimistic perspective in that we believe people are good and will do what's best for their pets when given the opportunity to do so. Yeah. And so again, coming from the side of rescue where you don't see that, and if you spend a day at the clinic, you're going to see that client after client. And, last year we had about 60,000 visits at our 2 clinics at the time.
Wow.
We opened our 3rd one this year in March, and that's a lot.
That's amazing.
It's quite a large amount of animals, and most of those animals came more than once a year. And so they came for their initial checkup, and they came back for their boosters, whatever that might be. And so just knowing that we have that connection to the community. And we're in areas that are underserved, so areas that do not have veterinary access for the most part. And knowing that someone, maybe shopping across the street at Fiesta and they see our sign, they're like, well, what's Emancipet? They pop over, we have that conversation, and then they become a client of ours moving forward.
And I will tell you, that's one of the reasons that Houston Pet Set loves working with Emancipet so much, is that non-judgmental aspect that, we firmly believe that if an animal has a home, if there is any way to keep it in that home, that's the ideal outcome.
Right.
And if the barrier is the cost of veterinary care, let's eliminate that barrier. Because like you said, they took that animal in out of the goodness of their hearts, whatever the case may have been leading up to it. And that animal is loved. That's a better outcome for them than taking them away or shunning them for whatever reason because they can't afford vet care.
Exactly.
So that's one of the reasons I think our partnership with our organizations works so well, is that why add to the stray or unadopted population when all we have to do is take down this barrier? And veterinary care is expensive.
It is.
And it's not anybody's fault. It's expensive.
Right.
And that's not because anybody's gouging. Nobody is... Any vet listening to this is like, I am not making a profit.
Right.
Thank you very much. Like,
no kidding.
It's just really expensive. But I know that it's comforting to have Emancipet as an option, even for other veterinarians, to say, look, I appreciate that you're here and you want care, and we can't necessarily offer it to you at a price you can afford, but here's a group that can.
Right.
And that's it makes it more of a community rather than sort of a competitive.
It does.
And that's huge, because we can't address this problem unless we all work together. No,
completely. And that's the thing. A spay and neuter at some clinics, and again, this is nothing against full service at all, but it can be, $400.
Yeah.
And ours is less than $90. And so again, it may not seem like a lot to somebody, but when you're trying to figure out how you're going to feed yourself and your family and pay the bills, that's a lot of money.
Keep the lights on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I know last year it's with COVID especially, we saw just a huge increase in clients, and there were a lot of new clients, and we do not income qualify. And so I know for me, having 3 senior dogs right now, they are there's a lot that goes into that. And one of them's in hospice care. One of them has like someone that comes to the house. And so it's like all these things where a lot of money's being put into that. And I'm glad that I'm able to do that, but not everybody's able to do that, right? And so even the most basic care can be very costly. And so looking at, again, that access to care. And so partnering with Houston Pets, that's incredible because I think it's so important for us to look at the strengths that we each have as an organization. I think it's a multi-pronged approach to a wicked problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy. There have been improvements. So we have so much work to do moving forward. I mean, we can all agree on that, right?
Yeah.
And so people are, have transport programs like Houston Pet Set, which is amazing, and like Rescued Pets Movement also, because these are animals that are on, Code Red right now on that list. And if we don't pull them and get them into foster homes and transport out, they will be euthanized, right? And so at the same time, looking at making spay and neuter accessible for everybody, and then also wellness, right? Because we see so many cases, and I'm sure you guys do too, of parvo and distemper and so many animals are dying because of that and suffering because of that. And not only the animals, but their people as well. Those families that love them, have brought those animals into their home, have created that bond, and all of a sudden this animal is sick and they may not understand why.
Right.
And also knowing that spreads is so contagious. And so it's a community health problem. It's a mental health problem because, again, people are suffering when they're losing these pets. And so I think it's just so important for us to all look at our strengths and come together. And so whether it be transport programs, adoption programs, fostering programs, spay and neuter programs, because it's going to take all of us together to make that happen.
Yeah. And it's important also to point out for anyone who doesn't know Emancipet, you're a nonprofit.
We are.
I mean, and so the fact that as a nonprofit, you're able to provide these services for the incredible low price point is huge. And it shows that this is, again, it's not about making a profit. It's about helping the community, supporting the community where they're at. And I think it's for us, it's heartening to see every niche being filled. On our last podcast, we talked to Pearland Parvo Recovery Center, and they focus just on parvovirus and helping rescues support that. And Emancipet is a veterinary nonprofit, and there are very few of those in the area. But knowing that is an option for people, it's just all these little holes get plugged.
Yep.
And eventually we will stop the overflow or the sinking ship or whatever the metaphor you want to use. And like you said, using our strengths, because this is, we look outside, on the way here, you see a stray dog, you go home and there was a cat that no longer, didn't make it across the street, and it can feel really, really unsurmountable. Insurmountable, is that the word? Until you look at the people who are actually on the ground doing the work.
Right.
Which is what Emancipet is for sure doing. And you are a nonprofit. I want you to talk about the event you have coming up, because I think it is the coolest. And I'm going to be there.
So yes, we are a nonprofit. And the way that works is, 80% of our revenue comes from our services offered. So as you were saying, everything is low cost. What does that mean? So our office visit is $20 for an office visit. But because of that, we have to make sure that our volume is high, right? And so that's why in the summertime, for example, our Wayside Clinic, which is the original clinic, will have 100 plus visits per day. And by visits, I mean people coming in for wellness checks, maybe dewormer, nail trims, for medication refills. That's a lot. And so we keep it, again, high volume. And then that's why also spay and neuter is high volume. And people also wonder, well, if it's so high volume, is it safe? It's completely safe, right? So our veterinarians are not volunteers. We get questions like, well, if you're a nonprofit, are they volunteers? They are not volunteers at all. These are doctors who either had their own private practice for a while and now they want to come into the nonprofit sector, or just who love our mission more than anything. Like, our mission speaks to so many people. And so that's why, again, it's a staff, and it's paid veterinarians. But again, keeping it high volume so that we can have that 80% from revenue. And then we do about 20% from fundraising. Right. And we're relatively kind of ramping up in Houston because we've kind of focused more on national fundraising. Up until this year, really. But this year we had our first gala.
It was so fun.
Yes, and we honored Houston Pet Set because you were saying about as far as our partnership and our collaboration is so key. And I think that we have to be able to take that time to celebrate our wins because, again, there are challenges throughout the year that we all face. But seeing those wins and seeing the collaboration and seeing that teamwork and partnerships, to truly celebrate, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a few things throughout the year. Our next event is in October 30th, and it is called Polling for Pets. It started 2 years back in Austin, and then last year was our first year doing it in Houston. And it is literally different teams that we have as part of this, and we are pulling fire trucks a City of Houston fire truck.
I love it.
30 feet to raise money for animals.
Yeah.
And this is something that the Special Olympics apparently has done in the past quite a bit. But last year we had, I think, 6 or 7 teams. This year we want to at least double that.
Mm-hmm.
And teams of 8 to 10 people. And the teams come in with their costumes. They have their own team name, a lot of team spirit. And they come in, and again, like you're doing the polls. And so the fire truck obviously is a neutral.
Put the parking brake on, really make a challenge.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And then you're polling it. And so again, there's different awards for the fastest poll,
Mm-hmm.
best team spirit, best fundraiser, best team costume. So that's going to be on October 30th at St. Arnold's. They were so great last year about hosting us. And it's not just that part of the event. We also have numerous animal, pet-friendly vendors. We have some rescue groups that come out with adoptable pets.
Ooh.
We have... it's called a pet tarot card reader.
No.
Yes. I mean, it's for entertainment purposes only.
Okay, sure.
But it's amazing. It's so much fun. I mean, you have your pet there, and she will tell you all about your pet.
I might have to bring my dog.
Yes.
Now
I mean, I think so.
I
think
want to know.
It's so much fun, and she's great. And so we just do different things throughout that time. We also have a pet costume contest because it is around Halloween.
Sure.
And so we have that. And last year it was really cute. So it's just a good time for, families to come out. And it is outdoors. And so there's an area for kids to hang out and play too. And even though it's in a brewery. And it was so much fun.
And the funds raised go to sort of subsidizing the cost of veterinary care for those who can't afford it.
Exactly.
That's
Yep.
wonderful.
Yes. And we need to focus more on that too. Because again, it's like we can only keep our prices low as long as we can meet that number, right? And we have had to increase throughout the years here and there, of course, especially with COVID, with our costs going up so high.
The supplies just to ship
it was
them
so
from where
much.
you get
And then
them.
knowing that some of the things are, something like the masks and gloves, those are things that were needed across the world, for COVID. And so the procurement was more difficult and the price went up. And so it was tough for us to have to increase our prices, but it's that or, not be able to offer our services.
Right.
And so that's where that all kind of came in. But
It's so great. It warms my heart. I love, because outside of the animal welfare world, I also worked in the veterinary field. And I love the passion and the dedication that these folks have for not only the pets, but for the people who love them. And that is exemplified. I know I've met some of your team and they are so phenomenal and just good people. And you can see it in the way that they interact with their clients, and anybody showing up with their pets at Emancipet's door is going to get treated with dignity and with respect. And their animals are going to walk away feeling good and safe and healthy. And that is huge in our Houston community. So
it is.
Thank your team on behalf of us for everything that you do, and for also for your hard work, because you are out in the community. You are one of the busiest people I think I've ever seen. Like every event, every
doing
fundraiser,
fun stuff, though.
good stuff. Like obviously you're
Right.
having a great time, but it's hardworking folks like you and your team that are going to help us tackle this ridiculous problem of pet overpopulation and homelessness, and that for that, thank you. And also thank you for joining us.
Oh yes, it's been wonderful. I mean, it's like having just
it's just coffee talk.
With a good friend. I mean, we love working with you all, and it's just knowing that we can all make this positive impact together speaks volumes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us
Thank
on
you.
Conversations for the Animals. This has been Angelita with Emancipet. We'll probably have to do this again just because it was so fun.
I think we should. Yes.
It was.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you all
Next
for
time
joining
we'll bring
us.
a puppy or two.
Okay, maybe. I know our producer Keegan would enjoy that. It'll be a disaster of a production.
It'll
but
be
we'll
fun.
all have
It'll
fun.
be fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Angelita.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
And thank everyone for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.